The Argentinian Senate has begun debates on a judicial reform bill proposed by President Alberto Fernandez in June. Cuban authorities have announced new measures to curb the spread of COVID-19 in the capital, Havana. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa appeared before the country's National Assembly this Thursday to address corruption allegations. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Argentina, where this Thursday the Senate began debates on the judicial reform bill proposed by President Alberto Fernandez in June. The move seeks to reform the federal justice system, including the creation of courts of appeal at provincial levels and new federal criminal courts both in the capital, Buenos Aires, and in the provinces, thus addressing the huge concentration of power in the hands of a small number of judges and prosecutors. It would also require that exams for new judicial appointees be recorded and made public. Opposition senators warned that there would be no quorum for the bill to be passed, but President Fernandez has secured the necessary number of votes for its approval. If approved, the bill will go to the Chamber of Deputies to be debated by lawmakers. In the face of controversy, President Fernandez has noted that all opinions aimed at contributing to a better justice system in the country are welcome.
This is a bill that comes from the national executive power with the objective of reorganizing the federal justice system within the scope and competence of the autonomous city of Buenos Aires and the provinces.
An Argentinian Senator, Maria de Los Angeles Sarnun, noted that President Alberto Fernandez's judicial reform bill seeks to establish a series of laws that will guarantee judicial responses and transparency.
Last December 10, the President of the nation, on taking office before the Legislative Assembly, said that we should end the dreadful stain on the credibility of the judicial institution caused by a minority sector. With this, I want to say that our society knew perfectly well what the intention of the current President of the nation was as regards starting with a series of laws, of which this is the first law that, I hope, will be approved by the Argentinian Parliament, and we will surely require other laws to shape a true judicial reform.
Thousands of Peruvian health workers protested in the capital Lima for the second day in a row this Thursday to condemn the shortage of resources available to hospitals in the fight against the novel coronavirus.
There are more than 9,000 workers in the health systems infected due to the lack of personal protective equipment. There are more than 70 social security workers who have died due to the lack of and interference to adequate and timely personal protective equipment.
We are here to absolutely demand personal protective equipment, which we are not given. Look at what we have, this, and we work with people who are infected.
And Peru became the country with the highest COVID-19 mortality rate in the world after Belgium corrected its figures on COVID-19 related deaths. The Belgian authorities subtracted 121 fatalities from their total coronavirus deaths to produce a new mortality rate of 85.5 deaths for every 100,000 inhabitants. The updated information situates Peru at the top of the list globally in terms of the number of people killed by COVID-19 compared to its population size. In Colombia, migration authorities have reported that the country's borders will remain closed until the 1st of October to prevent the spread of the novel coronavirus. According to Director of Migration Juan Francisco Espinosa, until that time, the only exception to the restrictions will apply to humanitarian and emergency cases, which will be able to enter and leave the country.
In accordance with Decree number 1168 of 2020, the borders, river, maritime and land crossing points will remain closed until October 1st. During the month of September, we will evaluate whether to open them at that time or on a later occasion. From the Colombia Migration Agency, we will continue to work on the humanitarian conditions, the obligations for unforeseen circumstances or acts of God, and of course the transit of cargo through these points. This is the time to continue taking care of ourselves, and we will be opportunely communicating the measures to be taken.
Mexico's Federal Court of Fiscal and Administrative Justice has ruled out the reinstatement of 3 former police officers who were dismissed due to irregularities in their conduct regarding the Ayotzinapa case. The court considered the arguments presented by Romeo Ortiz Valenciana, José Manuel Dircirio Correa, and Enrique Ramirez Hernandez, former agents of the Federal Ministerial Police, to invalidate their removal from office unfounded. During the hearing, reporting judge Juan Manuel Jimenez noted that the former agents travelled to the crime scene in the city of Iguala, Guerrero State, during the night of September 26 and the morning of September 27, 2014, where a group of students from the Raúl Isidro Burgos Rural Teachers College were forcibly abducted and then disappeared. It was ruled that the officers failed to properly attend to the case and were thus administratively responsible for the irregularities. According to the findings of an official investigation conducted by Mexican authorities, the student teachers were taken into custody by local police officers and handed over to the local drug gang United Warriors before being killed. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Cuban authorities announced new measures to curb the spread of COVID-19 in the capital, Havana, this Thursday. The new measures will come into force on September 1st and include a curfew from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., restrictions on the movement of private vehicles, and a 2-week ban on any visits to other provinces. Cuban authorities also decided to limit the opening hours of commercial establishments to 9 a.m. to 4 p.m, while also banning people from spending long periods of time in outdoor areas such as parks. The new measures come following a steep rise in cases over the past month, concentrated in Havana. Health authorities have reported over 3,800 cases, of which over 500 are currently active. Hurricane Laura struck Louisiana as an extremely dangerous Category 4 storm, but has since been downgraded to a tropical storm. Laura made landfall in Louisiana just before 2 a.m. on Thursday, with maximum sustained winds of 150 miles per hour, speeds that surpassed Hurricane Katrina in 2005, according to officials at the U.S. National Hurricane Center. The powerful hurricane ripped apart portions of Louisiana and far eastern Texas, killing at least 4 people and tearing off roofs while knocking out power for hundreds of thousands. By noon this Thursday, the winds had weakened to 70 miles per hour. Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, has said she doesn't think there should be presidential debates this year, arguing that Democratic candidate Joe Biden shouldn't legitimize a conversation with President Donald Trump. Pelosi told reporters on Thursday she knows she disagrees with Biden on the issue, but she believes that Trump will probably act in a way that is beneath the dignity of the presidency. Biden has said he's eager to take on Trump in 3 debates this fall. Pelosi says a 2016 debate between Trump and Democrat Hillary Clinton was disgraceful, as Trump stood close behind Clinton as she spoke, moving into her camera angle. Instead, Pelosi suggested that the 2 candidates hold individual events where they take questions. The Commission on Presidential Debates recently rejected a request from the Trump campaign to either add a 4th election debate or move up the calendar for contests. Trump's campaign said 16 states will have started voting by the time the first scheduled debate is held on September 29th. Meanwhile, Trump accepted the presidential nomination this Thursday night.
And they're not to be about skullduggery on the part of...
And U.S. Vice President Mike Pence closed the 3rd night of the Republican National Convention on Wednesday, while accepting the party's 2020 nomination for a 2nd term in office. The Vice President addressed the convention from the Fort McHenry National Monument in the city of Baltimore, Maryland, continuing the rhetoric against the Democratic Party's presidential candidate Joe Biden, who he claimed was a Trojan horse for the radical left. Pence was the only speaker of the night to mention the recent protests unleashed across the country due to police brutality and systemic racism, but he did so without entering into specifics and simply noting that violence must stop, whether in Minneapolis, Portland or Kenosha.
And if you want a president who falls silent when our heritage is demeaned or...
Following an official visit to France this Thursday, Senegalese President Macky Sall called for debt relief for African nations in order to rebuild economies in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic.
However, for the most part and for all African countries, internal efforts will not be enough to lessen the shock of COVID and revive economic growth. We need more financial capacity, which is why, with other colleagues, I have made a plea for substantial relief of Africa's public debt and private debt on terms to be agreed upon. The vast majority of African countries are in a dynamic of construction and progress. The countries are stable despite some difficulties, conjunctural governments are working, there is an educated youth who undertake and succeed. The sacrosanct rule of fiscal discipline, according to...
This Thursday saw the candidates of the two main Ivorian opposition parties file their candidacies to contest the presidential elections set for October 31st. Former Ivorian President André Konan Bedi, who led the country from 1993 until 1999, will run for the Democratic Party of Côte d'Ivoire African Democratic Rally, while Pascal Affe N'Guessan will represent the Ivorian Popular Front. The move comes after current President Alassane Ouattara formally presented his candidacy papers earlier this week to run for re-election. Meanwhile, the two opposition leaders have rejected President Ouattara's decision to run for a third term in office, claiming that the move is unconstitutional. President Ouattara was initially set to leave the post, but the sudden death of Prime Minister and presidential candidate Amadou Gon Coulibaly in July saw his rally of the Republicans Party urge him to stand again.
To all the men and women of Ivory Coast, this candidature will permit us to reconstruct Ivory Coast, bring the country together, an Ivory Coast of peace, of tolerance, of dialogue, and of development. I am candidate on behalf of the Ivorian Popular Front. I want to call on all party activists, whatever their positions, to rally together for democratic change, to rally to put an end to the suffering endured, to rally to allow President Laurent Gbagbo and Blaise Gudetto return triumphantly to Ivory Coast on the day after October 31. Because the return will be the first political act I will deliver reconciliation.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa appeared before the country's National Assembly this Thursday to address corruption allegations levelled against high-ranking government officials and the ruling African National Congress Party regarding funds destined to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. The president also commented on gender violence and the public debt.
We had to confront the reality that the violence that is perpetrated by men against women in our country had become a national emergency that required urgent and decisive action. It is the type of emergency which I also characterize as a second pandemic that we are having to deal with. Through the reprioritization of resources, we were able to allocate around 1.6 billion rand to implement the emergency response plan in the remaining months of the financial year.
And violent protests broke out in South Africa's biggest city, Johannesburg, on Thursday, following the death of a disabled 16-year-old boy who was allegedly gunned down by police. Residents burnt tyres and set up barricades along the streets, while also damaging a local police station. According to the sister of the victim, named Nathaniel Julius, police opened fire on Wednesday night after her brother failed to respond to questions due to his disability. An official investigation has been launched into the incident. Meanwhile, police spokeswoman Mathapelo Peters noted that officers had been deployed to El Dorado Park, where violent clashes with police had taken place.
Ask, is it right for a police officer to shoot a 16-year-old child, a Down syndrome child? child that can't even say his own name. You don't know nothing is going on around him, but he just got shot.
Totally wrong. And who is gonna fix the people's windows while the police are shooting here at the flats at Hillbrow in El Dorado Park? I think really action must be happening. When they are not gonna stop, then the police station will be down. And tomorrow we will not have a police station. This thing will gonna be the
children. Innocent children can't die like this because this child's mother never asked for her child to die. And who's going to bury this child? Huh? Who's going to bury this child? Because his mother's not working. She has no other income besides his disability grant she's getting from that child who passed away now. And my plea is that this police station must bury this child. They must bury this child.
Nearly 500 Burundian refugees living in Rwanda became the first group to return to their home country on Thursday after 5 years in exile following deadly political violence. The new president of Burundi has invited all those in exile to return and build a new nation. Neighbouring Rwanda currently hosts close to 72,000 refugees. The Rwandan government said this was the first organised voluntary repatriation process, and the country will collaborate with the UN Refugee Agency on similar operations as more refugees wish to go home. The United Nations has said hundreds of people were killed in the turmoil following late President of Burundi, Pierre Nkurunziza's decision to seek a third term in 2015, which critics claimed was unconstitutional. Nigerian health authorities offered an update on COVID-19 cases this Thursday. A total of 296 new coronavirus cases were confirmed, pushing the total number to over 53,000. The cities of Plateau with 85 cases, Enugu with 46, Oyo with 31 and Lagos with 21 recorded the largest number of new infections in the country. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 death toll stands at just over 1,000. The World Health Organization Director General has hailed Tuesday's declaration of the eradication of wild poliovirus in Africa, stressing that it was the result of great efforts.
Tuesday was a great day in global health. The certification of the eradication of wild poliovirus in Africa. This remarkable effort was started by Rotary International in the 1980s. And advanced by Nelson Mandela in 1996 with the launch of a campaign to kick polio out of Africa. At the time, polio paralyzed 75,000 children every year. Although sadly he is not here to see it, we have realized Madiba's dream. Globally, we need the same spirit of solidarity and partnership that are helping to end polio and sleeping sickness, to end the COVID-19 pandemic.
Italy is preparing for the 77th edition of the Venice International Film Festival, the first major event since the lifting of the coronavirus lockdown. Across the watery city, people are whitewashing walls, pulling tables onto roof terraces with cranes and setting up red carpets. Meanwhile, festival organisers have released a strict series of guidelines for participants that includes wearing face masks during screenings and temperature checks at entrance points. Movie fans will be kept at a distance from the red carpet to avoid crowding. Despite the restrictions, locals are enthusiastic about the event and hopeful that it will provide a boost to the local economy.
The festival could be a great opportunity to start again, both for the Lido and Venice. Let's not forget there is also the city of Venice, the restaurants on the Lido and the restaurants in Venice, but also for Italian cinema. Let's not forget that the cinemas have been closed even longer than we have. The cinemas opened again on July 1st, and many cinemas are still closed. If you don't present new films, the cinemas don't have work. So this is definitely an event that will relaunch both the Italian economy and the international economy.
We've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesoenglish.net. You can also join us on social media on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Teleso English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.